All right, boys. We've got another double up week for our power rankings, so I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to jump right into this. So, going over both week 8 and 9, starting with number 12, we've got Pat staying where he's been. He's 1-7 now. He's 11th in points for, second in points against. In week 7, he was 9th in scoring and lost, and in week 8, he was 10th in scoring and also lost. He just can't win. He's consistently in the bottom half of the league in scoring. He seems to get blown out pretty regularly. I don't think this is the worst team in the league, but this team 100% deserves to be last in my power rankings. And so, moving on, number 11, we have Garrett. Garrett is 2-6 to this point. He's last in points for. He's 5th in points against. In week 7, he was dead last in scoring and lost, obviously. And in week 8, slight improvement, he was 11th in point scoring and lost. I honestly don't even understand how Garrett managed to be as bad as he was week 7. His score for week 7 was 113.71 points. That is by far the worst performance of the season. And like I said, it's pretty impressive that he managed to be that bad. He had more players score less than 5 points than he had players who scored more than 10. Week 8 was significantly better for him point-wise, but it was still pretty awful, and again, same result, a loss. So, moving on from Garrett, our number 10 spot is Lark. Lark is 2-6. He's 6th in points for, he's 1st in points against. In week 7, he was 8th in points scored and lost, and in week 8, he was 4th in points scored and won. He's had just a brutal schedule, like I said. He's had the most points put up against him. He finally got a bit of a break last week, and he did take advantage and pull out a win. I mean, this team is definitely better than their 2-6 record, but despite that, I'm just not sure it's a playoff caliber team, despite my previous predictions that Mitchell loves to throw in my face. So moving on from Lark, in our 9 spot is Jay. Jeremy's 3-5. He's 10th in points for, 8th in points against. In week 7, he was 6th in scoring and won. And in week 8, he was 2nd in scoring and won again. He has made me look like a complete fool since I deemed him the worst team in the league. Since then, he's looked not even close to being the worst team in the league. And he's now got a win streak going. And look, he's right back in that, maybe not in the playoff race, but he's back in the race for the playoff race, I guess I'll say. If he can get hot right now, he can definitely slingshot himself right back into that conversation. Moving on to 8th, we have John. John is 4-4. He is 7th in points for. He is 6th in points against. In week 7, he was 7th in scoring and lost. In week 8, he was 5th in scoring and won. He really dug his own grave in week 7. His best lineup was the best in the league, yet he rolled out just the 7th best lineup of actual played lineups. He started just 71.6% of his max points, and he took a narrow loss that week because of it. In week 8, he almost completely flipped that. His best lineup was just 9th in the league among best lineups, but he was the most efficient manager. He rolled out 96.4% of his max points and secured a dub because of it. Overall, this team just continues to be the most average team in the league, and both his record and his statistics reflect that right now. Moving on to 7 is going to be Mitchell. Mitch is 4-4. He's 9th in points for. He's 10th in points against. In week 7, he was 3rd in scoring and won. And in week 8, he was dead last and obviously lost. He had a really weird couple of weeks, as you can tell from those numbers. In week 7, he picked up a really crucial win that snapped a win streak and held on to his playoff spot for him. And he definitely got a little lucky in his opponent in week 7. However, he was also 3rd in scoring, so he definitely earned the win. Now, in week 8, he was the worst team in the league and now lost that playoff spot. I definitely expected a drop-off of his team considering who he was missing in week 8. I mean, but man, this team should not have been this bad, despite that. Right now, his playoff hopes are in a kind of precarious position, and he really needs to get back to winning immediately. Uh, and a big part of why his playoff hopes are in a dangerous spot is because of our number 6 guy, and that's Kurt. Kurt is now 5-3. He's 8th in points for, and he's 9th in points against. In week 7, he was 5th in scoring and picked up a win, and in week 8, he was 9th in scoring but picked up a win again. I'd like to say that Kurt earned his playoff spot back, but that would kind of be a lie. He played the lowest scoring team both of the last 2 weeks, and those two opponents combined for 251.85 points. To put that in context a little bit, that's a score that's been beaten by somebody in a singular week twice this season. First in week 4 when Steve scored 256.55, and then in week 5, Rich scored 252.55. I definitely need to see more from Kurt before I'm convinced that he's going to be able to hold off Mitch, or even Lark for that matter, in the playoff race. And that's why he's still sitting at 6th. Now moving on to 5th is going to be Austin. Austin is 6-2. He's 5th in points for. He's 12th in points against. In week 7, he was 4th in scoring and won. And in week 8, he was 7th in scoring and got another win. His team had a really good week 7 and a good enough week 8 to pick up another win, and has now extended his win streak to 5, which is pretty big. Now, I still question if Austin is a legit threat to Rich with how easy his schedule has been, but either way, he's now passed him in the standings. And with the return of the bye week for the 1 seeds this season, passing up Rich at this point in the season is pretty huge. So Austin is going to, I'm sure, really want to hold on to that and get that bye week. Now, coming in at 4th is Steve. Steve is 5-3. He's 4th in points for. He's 11th in points against. In week 7, he was 1st in scoring and picked up a win. And in week 8, he was 6th and picked up a loss. In week 7, he absolutely demolished Nick. And then he followed it up with a pretty respectable week 8, despite losing. And I think at this point, Steve has definitely proven me wrong. I think he's shown me that he can be a legit contender this season. And now, while I do think Steve can be a legit contender, as we get into these top 3, this is definitely like another level in my mind. I think when I look at who is going to win this year, I would be pretty surprised if it's not one of these next 3. So let's get into it with number 3, and that's going to be Vinny, who's now 5-3. Vinny is 2nd in points for. He's 7th in points against. In week 7, he finished 2nd in scoring and won, and in week 8, he finished 3rd in scoring but picked up a loss. He had 2 really good weeks, but he came out 1-1, and now he's been swept by Nick, and that really hurts. And the good news, though, for Vinny is that points trump head-to-head in our tiebreakers, and he does still have Nick in points scored, so that's going to be pretty big for him going forward. Moving on to number 2, we have Rich falling off his 1 spot for the first time in a little bit. He's 5-3 now. He is 1st in points for. He is 3rd in points against. Week 7, he was 11th in points and lost. And week 8, he was 8th in points and lost again. It's been a tough couple of weeks for him. You know, week 7 we knew was going to be bad. We knew it was a punt week, and that's fine. It's a strategy that he took, and so we all expected it. But week 8 was a very different story for me, and really why he fell in this ranking. Look, he should have been back in form, but instead he got upset by Lark, and that's pretty big. You know, his team definitely shit the bed, and the Bills' offense did not do their part to help him like he would have liked. And so overall, I'm really not too worried about this team. I still think this is the best team, certainly in the Knuckles division, maybe even in the league. But he has dropped out of first place in his division for the first time all season, and that could end up hurting him as we get later in the season. So we'll see how that plays out. And we'll move on to the number 1 ranked team this week. A return for this guy, and that's Nick. Nick is 6-2 now. He is 3rd in points for. He is 4th in points against. In week 7, he was 10th in points and lost. And in week 8, he was 1st in points scored and won. His week 7 was pretty brutal. he was missing some of his key players, but it was still bad enough that I was a little concerned. He settled those concerns, though, in week 8. He got his guys back, and he absolutely crushed it. And he took back his first seed in the nose division and the top spot in my rankings. So that's going to do it for these rankings, gentlemen. We're starting near that point in the season where every game is really important. Only a couple more weeks before you start seeing, 1-2 people just get eliminated, 1-2 people lock up a spot. We're right there, guys. So I look forward to the rest of the season. I look forward to seeing who picks up a win this week, who picks up a loss. And I'll talk to you guys soon.